Alright, hello there guys, this is CD Mangaka here, and today we're going to be doing a quick patch analysis breakdown for 5.10, which was announced earlier today. Getting this out a little later tonight because I was at work when it dropped and I finally off, had some dinner. So, without further ado, let's go on ahead and get into it. So let me switch this up, and I am going to move this doohickey here, and let's make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so 5.10, there's a couple of things which are relevant within it. So, like, first off, this is going to be the patch where Echo gets dropped. I have no idea what to expect from Echo, in all honesty. I don't know if he's going to be OP, if he's going to be, like, underpowered. I don't really understand how he particularly works just yet, or how people are supposed to build him. He's got a lot of AP ratios, but he seems to be, like, a melee on-hit focus champion, so I just don't know. I think that he's, based on looking at what I remember from his kit, he's got some pretty good potential. So we'll have to see how that one plays out. I'll watch the spotlight on him a little later tonight, I think, just to figure that one out. So Akali's getting a bit of a buff here. When they changed her Shadow Dance, her ultimate that is, excuse me, they kind of messed with her a bit because they changed it so that she would appear like behind the target, like a pretty far distance away from the target. So if a target had their back to you, so like they're running away from you and you ulted onto them, you'd actually be placed farther away from them, and so you didn't have a really good chase potential with it. That was one of the unforeseen drawbacks from it. So now, though, they're giving her a bit of a utility with the Shadow Dance. Actually, okay, that is the name of it. Okay, here, let's read it right here, you Nimrod. If you have your Mark of the Assassin on that target, then the distance which you pass through them gets cut in half. So basically this means that now there's this flexibility with Akali, where, and they also cut down the distance that you can pass on through. So you at least go 100 units. You can only go up to 200 units though. So you will always be closer to your target now. But now there's a bit of a selection. So if like you get ganked and you need to and you're trying to escape, you can Shadow Dance through a minion without Shadow Mark on it, and you'll go through them farther. Whereas if you're trying to chase somebody and you get Mark of the Assassin on them, you'll be closer to them. So there's a bit of a more utility with the ultimate, which I think is a pretty cool thing for her to have. I don't think we'll be seeing a whole lot of her though, as we're in a fairly heavy tank meta right now, and yeah. So, good luck assassinating those guys and blowing them up in a couple of seconds. It just doesn't work well. Solo queue, depending on the game, she'll be fine. Cassiopeia. So Cassiopeia has been a pretty powerful pick within the mid lane, competitively, and in solo queue. For running on a month now, I want to say. She was a huge pick at MSI, if you recall that one, you know. So right now, it's about expected that we see some moderate nerfs to her coming in, namely nerfs to her sustain. They are just nerfing the ability power a little bit. She's losing like 1/4% on it, but considering how high your AP values can be in the late game, that's actually a pretty substantial nerf as far as how much that her Twin Fangs heal you after she gets her, or heal herself after the 100 stacks. And then also they are nerfing the mana regeneration on her Twin Fangs, so it refunds only half of the cost, 1.5% of Cassiopeia's maximum mana. And I used the word cost incorrectly right there, excuse me. It used to refund 3% of your maximum mana when you kill a unit, now it only refunds 1.5 of it, so the mana regeneration has been cut in half. So she'll probably be less spam, less free spam on mid-wave, so there'll be a little less wave clear for her, is where that's really going to be coming on in, as well as less mana regeneration for her. Well, maybe not necessarily wave clear, she'll still have her poison pools and whatnot, but now she won't be so trigger happy with her spells, especially like in after trades, you know, like she'll just use Twin Fangs to last hit a unit and it get a lot of mana back and then go into trade when she has like a whole reserve of mana. So Gragas has been probably like the strongest jungle pick right now. I feel like with these Sejuani nerfs that we're starting to see, that there's a prospect for him to kind of take the spot as the definitive tank jungler, which we've already kind of seen him be that. If you look in like right now in the LCK going on, which is currently in its second week, Gragas has been probably like the first. If he's open, he's picked pretty much like as a first pick priority. He's a really good jungler right now. So they're just basically nerfing the radius on his body slam, like shaving off 20 units and then shaving off 40 units. And this is moving is when he's in flight, and is when he stops, so it'll be a little harder for him to hit those things. But what makes him still good is going to be there. He's just losing. I don't think of it's too big of a nerf, but you know it'll probably make his if people aren't used to it, you know, his early ganks will be a little more reliant on accuracy. Jinx, this is actually a huge nerf, and I expect this to be like quite a big issue within a region like China, actually, because China, to my knowledge, plays a lot of Jinx. Like, Deft is currently like 17-0 on her, some outrageous number like that. You know, it's pretty cool in my opinion. But Riot is, so far right now, like nerfing her in a way which is going to take away a lot of her early game power when it comes to objective fighting and dueling, and instead force her to get levels in order to access that. So they're taking out, if you look here, a lot of the attack speed from Switcheroo. You know, they're cutting it down like almost in half at rank 5. You know, which is like, wow, that's just like guts her, that just makes her crap. You know, like now she doesn't scale so well. But then now her minigun will gain extra attack speed based on her character level. If you look, there should be like 18 divisions right here. So now this really kind of pushes Jinx almost into a state where like Tristana kind of is right now, where she has to wait to get her levels in order to ramp up into like this like monstrous late game fantasy rather than hitting the spike at level 9. I don't think Tristana ever had that issue as an ADC. But now Jinx's power when it comes to pushing down a tower is going to be it is going to suffer. Instead of getting this extra 130% damage ramp up speed by level 9, you're only going to get 70%, which is still pretty good, but you're losing half of the bonus attack speed that you were getting before. So Jinx is not going to be able to take towers as fast, which means she's not going to be able to be such a monstrous objective pusher in the mid game, giving her a bit more of a trough at that point. And also her dueling as a result of losing that power is also going to go down. I think that this particular change raises the question on whether or not we will see Jinx players start to max her W first over her Q. I don't think that will be the case, simply because given you still get quite a bit of attack speed from maxing Q, but in addition to that, you also get the increased range from Fishbones, which is a huge thing to have early on, and it gives you this incredible lane presence. Whereas if you max Zap first, if you miss that W, then you know you're not much of a threat. So I don't think we're going to see any changes in how Jinxes are leveled up. It's just that she's not going to have like this crazy snowball potential that you had before, where she gets a couple kills and then she can just go take your tower really quickly. So it is going to curve her a little bit, make her early game a little less oppressive, but what makes Jinx valuable or unique from others is still intact. So the karma changes are actually something I'm really kind of excited for. I think they're interesting, and they offer up a lot of unique opportunities, and perhaps give more incentive to use some of Mantra's other mantra spells rather than just Q. So right now her passive is getting buffed so that the refund spell on hit will now begin to scale with levels at 1, 7, and 13. So it's going to be untouched through the laning phase. Once you get to level 7, then suddenly you're going to shave off 2.5 seconds of your cooldowns, and then it's going to be 3 seconds at level 13 when you're in team fight. So that's quite a bit. That's an extra second cooldown, which is pretty cool. So then on basic attack, there's also an increase, but this one is not as big. It's only like a quarter of a second as opposed to half a second. This basically means as the game goes on, Karma will have more and more access to her spells, or to her ultimate rather, and be further rewarded for being accurate with them or getting around that. So Focus Resolve, put a lean leash on it. You can now target monsters in addition to champions. So I don't think this is going to be anything like revolutionary as far as, oh, here comes the jungle Karma, boys. Right? It's kind of screwing over ranged junglers within this patch for one, and then AP caster junglers aren't really in meta at all right now, so I don't think we're going to see anything new out of this, but this definitely will help her actually when it comes to Baron and to Dragon Control by giving her an additional spell to damage the monsters. So that's something that is going to be a result of this patch, as well as the ability to, you know, misclick in the jungle if you're on a chase. So that's the biggest thing, is you could mess up your W and you'll be able to deal a little extra damage to Baron and Dragon. Now I really like this change actually. So while her old W mantra, it added like additional damage, but it was kind of pointless just because, like, you know, holding that root was pretty hard to do, and you know, if you wanted more damage, you could just do the Q. I mean, like, it was a great zoning tool. It was fairly simple to land. It had a powerful slow to it, or you had your shield would also deal damage to it. So Mantra W was pretty much outclassed. Like, the only thing that made it really cool was like the healing aspect of it. But now they're actually making it a little more unique in the sense that using your renewal will increase the duration of the root by 0.5, 0.75, 1, and 1.25 seconds. And, like, let's actually look real fast because this is adding on to the original duration of the snare. You have to keep that in mind. So let me pull it up. It's just been a while since I've looked at Karma. Okay, let's see. There we go. Okay, so Inspire and Defiance, Focus Resolve. So it actually, the root on it will starts at 1 and then it scales up to 2 seconds. So then you have to think, okay, so add in, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, okay, so with each level of her ultimate, okay. So this can basically give Karma the ability to snare somebody for 3.25 seconds maximum rank, which is huge. That is a big root, provided that she can stay attached to that target and not die. She's trying to do that. I think it'll be pretty rare to see those in the late game. But now with the additional add-on, now Karma has an incentive when a jungler comes in for a gank to use her ultimate in conjunction with her W in order to give an extended snare on that target and to keep them pinned a little longer. I basically just had the same thing twice over in order to set up the gank a lot better. So now Karma has this really cool way of okay, I want to use this spell in this situation just to keep this guy held down a little longer, to set up my jungler for a really good bit of CC, or in a late game team fight if you're playing her as an AP mid mage. Alright, this guy is going to have to kite me or else he's going to be stuck there for 3 seconds and he's going to die. So that's a pretty cool interaction. I really like that change in general. I'm okay with that going away to remove bonus damage that nobody ever cared for. E is getting a bit of a buff. It now scales down. It loses 2 seconds once you max rank it. It's losing some of the mana cost also when you max rank it, so we could probably see this being max second. I think that's already the case as it is, just because it was such a great spell and W was kind of meh. And then the shield amount, though, is going down in the late game by like 40. However, her Defiance gives a bigger shield on the target she casts it on, so now there's a set incentive to be selective with who you cast it on, and there's also no longer damage to enemies on it. And then there is the with the boost in the primary shield target, then our surrounding allies get about half of it. So it's still a pretty big shield, but it's also losing damage there, which I didn't even know it did damage, to be honest. I'm like, wait, that does damage? What the fuck? So they're kind of stripping out a lot of damage from Karma's kit, so this might be, we might not see her mid lane, though, with these changes, because, now she only has, 2 damage spells in her whole kit. So I think this is going to push her to a support role, but I think it's also going to make her a little better at it, just by giving her a couple more options, as well as making it a little more meaningful with her ultimate. We may not even see her be played, to be honest. She hasn't been a popular pick for a while. It doesn't really fit into what's going on currently, but it's nice to see Riot doing some changes to it, and at least trying to give her a bit of a stronger identity. Leona is losing some width on her Zenith Blade. Should match up the visual, so Leona players are going to have to be a little better with their E to hit it. Simple as that. Lulu is getting some mana regen. Her base mana regen is up by a lot, but she doesn't get as much growth stat. This basically means that so I feel like explaining for a moment, actually, kind of why this is buffing support Lulu without really buffing mid lane Lulu, okay? Mid lane Lulu is going to get a lot more levels than support lane Lulu. It just happens. She's going to be solo lane Lulu, gets solo XP. Support Lulu has to do double XP. Bottom lane is usually right there with the jungler in terms of levels, just because the experience is being split between 2 people. So by giving Lulu more base mana, they are basically making it so okay, you're going to start out with more mana, which helps both sides, but by nerfing the mana regeneration growth stat, which I assume is enough to compensate for the buff and at some point level out with solo lane Lulu, now support Lulu is going to have more mana regeneration in lane, and because she's not going to get as many levels as solo lane Lulu, she's going to have more mana overall, whereas solo lane Lulu, who is going to get more levels than support Lulu, isn't going to get as much from those extra levels because of the nerf to the level per growth stat. So that's the difference between them, and that's how this actually buffs support Lulu without buffing mid lane Lulu. Although mid lane Lulu now will have a little more mana at the start to go with, but she won't get as much from leveling up, and there will come a point where it probably just level out. Rek'Sai is losing some health. It's about 11:31, close to 31. I really don't think that's appropriate. I don't see why. It's kind of oh, hey, we're going to nerf Rek'Sai a little bit. And to me, it's we're going for light change to reduce the reliability for level 3 ganks. It's just Riot, why do you not want early aggression anymore? Holy freaking crap. Why don't you see this on a Gragas? Gragas is better at level 2 ganks than Rek'Sai is. It's just like, oh my gosh, they are stifling the playstyle in the jungle with so many of their changes, and it's just bad. So it's not that big of a change to Rek'Sai though. She's still gonna have all these 2 things, so it's whatever. This is probably gonna force Rek'Sai to maybe be going into more of a Cinderhulk build right now, and I only say that because with the nerf to Cinderhulk, I think there's some situations where it's okay to build Warriors of Champion on Rek'Sai if you're looking to snowball a game really early, but Cinderhulk is still like a really good eye with the multiplicative stats. So it depends on the playstyle of the game and how it's going. But this one, Rek'Sai might need the extra help from Cinderhulk. I don't really know. Early game aggression being nerfed. Thank you, Rito. Rise. So Rise is still in the rework phase, and I mentioned this before when it was initially came out that we'll probably see a lot of buffs to him as Riot's trying to figure out, okay, like where's the balance point for this whole for this kit rework that we've kind of put him through to get him to find like his appropriate power level. So what they're doing is that this is actually a pretty big buff. So all of the buffs will be that are associated with his passive will apply at the beginning of a spell's cast time. So rather than waiting for Rise to completely channel out a spell, when he instantly casts one, the buffs from his passive will come on, which is huge because now, you know, this gives players the ability to kind of go for like a clutch shield in a situation where like, oh, passive built up, I need this real fast. So this will let Rise get out of some stickier situations a little easier because you don't have that extra like delay on it. And then the supercharge duration will now last 6 seconds at all ranks rather than being 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is a huge buff. It basically doubles the duration of that passive in his early game, which is pretty nuts. So that's going to be a huge boon to his laning phase. His Q damage is up by 20 at maximum rank. It's still a skill shot, so you can still miss it. Duh. So, but, you know, if you hit it, a little more reward for it. And then his Desperate Power now lasts 6 seconds at all ranks. So, again, what we're seeing is a lot of early game nerfs to Rise, which tells us that Rise's late game fantasy is probably in an okay spot because really nothing is being changed about his late game with these things except for the Q damage. But his early game probably is so weak that you can't even get through it. So, Riot's looking to give him some love there so that he can have a smoother time getting that monstrous late game that we're looking for. So Sejuani is going to deal less of the target's maximum health damage. So this is going to be a huge blow to Sejuani. She's losing like 4% of target's maximum health at max rank of her W. This is going to hurt her clear. This is going to hurt her damage in team fights. She's still going to be great at engaging, but I think with these nerfs, once they go live right now, they're saying like, hey, this isn't going to go live just yet. You know, there's going to be a hot fix for this. But I think with that change, Gragas is probably going to be the #1 Cinderhulk jungler, like, just by far. Because he's got more health shred than she does, he's got pretty good poke, really good disengage or engage, so you can flex with that. And then, yeah, Sejuani is going to lose a lot of damage from just sitting on top of you, so this is a pretty substantial nerf to her. So, yeah, this is going to be felt definitely once Riot does, if I should say Riot pursues more drastic changes with the Cinderhulk change, so here we go. Scion, bug fix, Taric, his Q mana cost is down by 40 at maximum rank, which, like, holy shit, that's a really high cost. Not enough to make him viable or, like, completely elite tier support within current meta musings, but this will help him, you know, sustain a little better in the phases. So if you play Taric, have fun with him. Anyway, so shot performance, they're making it a little smoother. Now, there's a lot of changes, actually, to some of the supports within this particular patch. Namely, a couple item lines are getting a bit of a, I wouldn't say a revamp as much as a buffing, and then the utility tree is actually being reworked a little bit, which I'm really excited for those changes, actually. That's going to be pretty dope. So Ancient Coin is, I'll put it this way, if I ever see a support start with Ancient Coin in the laning phase, I cry and go, well, I'm fucked, odds are. Because it's so bad. It is just bad as it is right now to really lane with. It doesn't give you like any combat stance. It, you know, you basically have to like be passive for it to work, and so you can't actively engage in trains and seek to get an advantage over your opponent. And then even as you're being that passive, it just doesn't do a whole lot. So Ancient Coin, but to compensate for these things, Riot's giving it so that it has a little more gold generation so that it can keep up with like the Spell Feast line and the Relic Shield line just a little bit, as well as some buffs to the sustain from the mid-tier items. So I don't think, without changes to the Ancient Coin, the first item pickup of the kit, that the start of it is going to be any better unless we're looking at like a lane swap scenario anyway in competitive play. But then, Nomad's Medallion and Talisman of Ascension, or primarily Nomad's Medallion, actually, for the laning phase will be a little better of a pickup, a little less punishable, and then Talisman of Ascension is going to be a pretty good item for the late game. So what they're doing is that they're upping the gold per nearby minion death by 1 at each iteration. So Ancient Coin gives you 3, Nomad's Medallion gives you 4, Talisman of Ascension gives you 4. So that's pretty cool. Combine that in conjunction with the utility for one gold for every creep that your ally CS's, then you're basically getting 4, 5, and 5 gold per minion death. So if your ADC farms an entire wave, that's 30 gold for you, which is a pretty good production, actually. And that's just if your ADC farms. If they don't farm, you basically only lose on 5 gold. So the gold generation from this lineup is a lot better than before. And the gold collection range is increased by 300, so then you could get a couple little extra bits, or play even more farther back in the lane and still get the gold generation, which is good because this is going to let Ancient Coin users play a little more passive role in the laning phase and still get the gold generation from it. So, Riot's kind of giving a little more love after they see it's not going to be too big of an issue. Then gone to the Nomad Medallion buffs. The mana regeneration is doubled, and the health per nearby minion death is also doubled. So this gives you a lot more sustain. Honestly, with that change, I think Nomad's Medallion is going to be a really good pickup on Soraka. I don't think that she'll become meta in any way, or suddenly enter within like the top 5 support picks, but she's definitely going to be a lot better in the laning phase because she is going to have more sustain with the Nomad's Medallion and more mana regeneration. So that's a really good pickup for Soraka, actually. And sustain supports in general, who can kind of double down on that sort of factor. So again, you have to think of it this way: per minion death 10, that's an extra 60 health per minion wave. That's quite a bit. That's quite a bit of health, actually, as you just kind of sit there. So that's a pretty good pickup. The Talisman essentially has a similar thing, but then the cooldown is now down to 40 seconds, which is insane. Holy crap. Combine that with the utility master page, holy crap, Talisman of Ascension is going to be really good. Which I kind of like that Riot's giving it that, although that buff to it, because Righteous Glory is kind of like the run at the enemies. But now Talisman of Ascension does also allow your team to disengage from a fight, so I think there's going to be a bit more diversity with this pick. Ardent Censer is getting buffed a little bit. It now adds an attack speed buff, which grants 30 plus 30 magic damage on hit, and then but it does give like 10% less bonus attack speed, and the effect is only applicable to champions, because giving like that ability to minions and having to deal an extra 30 damage is just stupid. So I don't think we'll see any more Ardent Censer like as it already like is. Like I think on an item for Nami it's going to be pretty good. But the problem is that supports have a limited income as it is. In a solo queue, if there's a lot of kills going around and you're getting a bunch of assists as a support, sure, I think you could pick this up along the way. But like items like Talisman, items like Mikhail's, items like maybe Frozen Heart and some supports are just better pickups overall for them to go for first. And with their limited income, there's just not enough play money to really pick up an Ardent Censer. That said, I think it's a cool buff. And solo queue, you could probably use it as a snowball item, just add some extra damage. So Blade the Room King and Cutlass are getting buffed. Their active cast range is going up to 550. This is a pretty substantial buff for AD carries, because most AD carries have that 550 range. So if you're in range of any carry with 500 range to 550 range, if they can auto attack you, they can activate this active. Activate the active. Okay. They can use the active, which is huge because this is going to let them kite. Rather than letting you get an extra 100 units closer to them, and then they use the active to slow, you get a bit of a speed boost away to kite away from you, as well as the burst of a heal. Instead, they can kite you from max range, get that added effect. So this is going to be an extra either chase or disengage potential for an AD carry. Now, this also applies to assassins, but I'm more interested in this being applied to AD carries. So I think the only ones who aren't really going to benefit from this, as far as being able to use it at their maximum attack range, would be Ashe, Varus, Tristana after level 2. Barely. Who else? Caitlyn, Jinxin, Fishbone's form, Kog'Maw with Bioarcane Barrage, Twitch with his ultimate up, and I'm pretty sure there's another range modifier I'm forgetting about right now. Yeah, so Anyways, pretty cool buff. Banner command cast range is up to 1200, just to match the aura range. Not too big of a buff. Utility masteries. This is a big one. So, utility, with the way it's being reworked, there's really nothing great that you can get out of by putting 9 points into it. And in my perspective, a lot of people already don't put 9 points into it. It seems like for like a mid lane role, you know, like I think you could do like 2109 to pick up the extra health regen from biscuits. Although defensive tree is still a good route to go just to get the damage reductions for trades. So there you have it. But with this utility thing, I think it's going to be really powerful to invest to go all the way through the tree because of just like the huge benefits you get from it, but it's going to be less rewarding just to put 9 points into it. So for mid laners, I think 2190 will be a standard to go for, unless they really want the biscuit or they want to increase the amount of time that they get from a blue buff or red buff. So kind of depends what they're going for. But definitely, I think that after this change, every single support should probably go all the way into utility, just because the benefits you get from it are amazing. Okay, so let's start off. So meditation, expanded mind gets swapped in the tree. So meditation was the mana regeneration that you got. Okay, now it's going to be later on in the tree, so you don't just get free mana regeneration up front. However, instead of it being like this really small amount, it's going to be this percent of missing mana every 5 seconds. So it actually kind of acts as like a mini Chalice of Harmony within your own character, which is a pretty cool thing to have. So that's quite a bit just to have as a base. But again, you have to get like 17 points into it or something like that. Meanwhile, Expanded Mind is now at the start of the utility tree, but instead of giving you this extra percentage of maximum mana, it gives you an extra flat amount of mana, being 25, 50, and 75. So basically an extra spell cast in lane. It's not too big of a thing. It's not that rewarding to have, but hey, it's there at the very least, and probably just something to burn some points into. Inspiration is getting buffed quite a bit as well. When you're near an allied champion with a high level, it will now grant 10 or 20 experience every 10 seconds rather than 5 and 10. That's actually pretty good for supports to really begin to sort of catch up on some levels. I think that it's worth to look at getting some points into to have that extra thing. Because 20 experience is like, what, a creep or something like that? As long as you're roaming with somebody. So I think it's worth a pickup. This might be enough for Bard to be in a really good spot. Although, you know, based on bans in Korea, apparently he is in a good spot. Bandit, this is a glorious change. Okay, can we talk about how stupid that mastery has been for melee champions? It's like range champions, like, here, have an extra 5 or 3 gold or whatever it is whenever you attack a champion, like once every 5 seconds. Like, man, that's pretty freaking great. Melees are just like, you have to get a kill to get 15 gold. It's like, that's so freaking retarded. That discrepancy right there is like, why is that so stupid? Holy crap. It's like the perfect Leona snowball master, but it's like, hey guys, don't worry, I got an extra 15 gold. It was so bloody stupid. But now it's actually really good for melee champions. Thank freaking God. So every time you attack an enemy as a melee champ, you get an extra 8 gold from it. So it's time to be really aggro, boys. You may have nerfed my Leona, man, but we're making bank right now, son. So that's a pretty nice extra bit of income for melee supports. Intelligence. This buff is just, oh my God. This is just so... It reduces the cooldown of activated items by 20% if you put 3 points into it. So with a 40-second cooldown Talisman of Ascension, if you do 20% of that, so you take 40 multiplied by 2, it shaves off 8 seconds. So it's a 32-second cooldown on Talisman of Ascension. And for Mikhail's Crucible, 90, it's like 18 seconds rather than like 9. So that's a pretty good buff, because that can save your skin a couple of times. So there you have it. Then Wanderer, you just get a flat 20 movement speed. So while it's going to fall off a little bit in the late game, because percent will always outdo flat at some point, but extra 20 movement speed up front, hello. That is really good. That's like free boots right there. That is just delicious. That is just marvelous, really. Marvelous. Absolutely marvelous. So Wanderer, yeah, the utility tree it's going to be packing some heat, boys. I would definitely recommend taking some points out of like any resistances that you get in the defensive tree or the offensive tree. Just go ham in the utility, run like a super nothing but tank, rune page, and you'll be good. You'll be great. It's gonna be a really good time to be support. So, anyways, bit of adjustment to super minions. Monster leashing is being changed a little bit. Right with this change is basically denying ranged farmers in the jungle like the ability to avoid a lot of damage, so they have to take as much damage as their melee counterparts, which is kind of okay. I don't mind it. I don't mind jungle just being a melee only thing. If you lose his aggro due to range, it has a leash counter now. If it requires a range target after being hit, it will also increase leash counter by 1. So basically, if you're a ranged champion trying to farm in the jungle and you want to, leash them, you're only going to be able to juggle them 3 times before they reset. That's basically like no time. That's like nothing. So that's, and the leash range is reduced as well. So that's pretty intense. So yeah, that's rough. That's rough. Some of the visual adjustments are coming around for the Rift. Howling Abyss is getting another change to its new summoner spell. There's a change to ranked inactivity thing. They're going to tell you more when, hey, you're about to get demoted. Hexakill Tree Line is coming out. There's a couple bug fixes. Banshee's available block Frost King's Claim. Stealth wards caught by will turn briefly invisible the moment they naturally stealth out their placement. And I think there was a still nerfing. Sorry, I just read a comment right there. I don't think nerfing early mana regen is going to be all that bad, because it's like, so I really want to address that comment I read right now. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah, hey, let's bring back resource lessons. Yeah, but guess what? There's so many tanks going on right now that they can't do shit anyway. So, what can you do? And then besides, just like start Flask if you really want to. So that's patch 5.10. Ultimately, overall, I think there's going to be a bit of a change in how most people are going to run the support setup, as well as like a bit of a rewards for supports. So I think the utility tree is going to be legitimately good for supports, and probably standard for supports to go to, unless you're going for like a super aggro or cheese-oriented bot lane. Expect Gragas to be king of the jungle. Ultimately, not too much is going around to change things. We'll see whether or not the nerfs to Cinderhulk in the last patch will begin to kind of show some fruition, and like maybe some other picks in the jungle will start showing up and combat these guys, or if people just still stick with the Cinderhulk meta or not. So we'll see how that is, but ultimately I'm pretty excited for what's going on here, guys. Anyways, thanks for joining me for this replay analysis. My name is Mangaka, and I will be signing off.